This program is made possible in part thanks to generous donations from viewers like you.
Hello and welcome to the Suzanne Atwell Show. Thanks for joining us. In this episode, the Sarasota Democratic Party, what they stand for, demographic opportunities and threats, candidate support and development, and the elephant in the room. How to compete with local Trump loyalists in Sarasota County who are gaining momentum even as details of the big lie and January 6th are coming to light. Our story begins Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020.
It's election night in America, and a nation in crisis is at a crossroads.
We're counting down to the first exit polls and the first results as our coverage begins now.
Despite COVID-19 concerns, 155 million people turned out for the 2020 presidential election. Joe Biden won the popular vote by 7 million votes.
Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million.
In Florida, Trump won by nearly 400,000 votes, just over 3%. 77% of the state's registered voters turned out. Even though Trump carried Florida, registered Democrats outnumbered Republicans statewide by just over 100,000. More notable, independents and no party affiliation equal nearly 4 million registered voters. Independents and non-affiliated voters far exceed the margin of error in Florida elections, not even close. We used to be a swing state. Not anymore. The governor, both U.S. Senate seats, consecutive presidential races, all Republican. And few counties are more red or more reliably Republican than Sarasota. There are nearly 350,000 registered voters in the county. Republicans enjoy a 50,000 advantage. They have actually increased their lead since the 2020 presidential election. But again, look at the independents and no party affiliation. Nearly 100,000, substantially more than the margin of victory for any candidate in the county. Getting independents to vote for your candidate and getting your own members to turn out is what political parties do. In the case of Democrats in Sarasota County, that effort is led by Joanne DeVries. I'm going to start with the big picture. The party, the Democratic Party's mission, its core principles, what differentiates you and what is unique about the Sarasota County Democratic Party?
Well, obviously, our main goal is to get Democrats elected. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. Right now, my main priority is we are in get out the vote. Right. We have an election coming up, so I'm laser focused on that. Right. But the broader view, what we have been doing is strengthening the grassroots of the party. And, you know, number one is field organizing. We're building neighborhood teams. We hope to continue this. And the more you are in the grassroots level, the better it is to get the voters out to vote. Exactly. Voter protection is also a main priority. Now, you know, since a few years ago. And we keep our voter protection team going on a year-round basis, or we keep strengthening it so we are ready when we need it. Right. And then one of the other things we are focusing on locally is to build our social media, digital more. That has become so important, and we just have to do a better job of that as Democrats.
Right, absolutely. What's your view of the market in terms of registered voter growth opportunities? So let's begin with your strategy for recruiting independents. What does that look? What is this the climate for that? How do you get them in the tent?
It's difficult because MPAs, no party affiliates, independents, they vote on issues. So they don't want to be associated with the Democrat or the Republican Party. They will go and vote the issues. So if they believe in your issues, then they'll vote with you. So it's really important. We do a little bit of outreach, but really that's the candidate job. They're the ones that can get the NPAs, independents, out to vote for them when they talk about their issues. And they can also get those, what we call soft Republicans. It's talking about voter registration. It's, Sarasota has turned into a bright red county.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult. And I do have to say, 2.5 years ago, before COVID, we were at a 32,000 voter registration gap. But because of COVID, Democrats stayed home, not only countywide, statewide, but nationally. And the Republicans have managed in the state of Florida, as well as the county, to really build up that voter registration gap.
So do minorities, youth, and suburban affect all this, or were they affected by this? Do they make the difference here?
Oh, absolutely. We do tremendous outreach and work with the African American community, the Hispanic community. For the first time ever, we actually have a radio, we're doing Spanish outreach. We have a radio show in Spanish, the Democratic Party and the Hispanic Caucus. And we're doing just a lot of outreach in the community.
On that note, let's look closer at the Hispanic voter. Fastest growing segment. We all know that. We keep hearing those numbers. Their bloc exceeds the margins of victory in swing states like Florida. I don't have to. So again, what you've mentioned a few things, but we need to recruit Hispanics in this community. And how are we doing that as opposed to the Republicans?
So we have 17 clubs and caucuses. The Hispanic Democratic Caucus is one of them. There's approximately 16,000 registered Hispanics in the community, but they're not all Democrats. About 5,000 are Democrats, a couple thousand NPAs, and the rest are Republicans. So, but we are constantly doing outreach with social media, with Spanish, to do different events around the community with the Hispanic population.
What kind of results are you getting when what type of groups do you gather with the Hispanic community, and what do you find that there are issues? I've heard these phrases that it's not the soccer moms anymore, it's the Walmart dads. It's that Hispanics are saying, wait a minute, Democrats are all socialists. We want gas prices to go down, groceries. We want to be able to have affordable housing. And a lot of them are Cuban. Have you been able to differentiate that?
Well, obviously, the Hispanic population is varied, but we do not have a huge Cuban population in Sarasota.
Okay.
It's mostly Mexican. So, and that makes a difference because you have to do outreach to the different communities in a different way because the issues, they have different issues. And we're working with a media organization, a radio station that does a lot of outreach to the community, again, in Spanish. We're doing a lot of ads. We're doing mailings in Spanish. So these are things we're doing on an ongoing basis now.
Right. Okay, I'd like to talk about talent development, recruiting, mentoring, supporting young, charismatic persons and getting them elected. What are you doing about that?
Social media plays a huge part because that's where the young folks are. We'll post on social media. I do have to say, there's a really great activist group that has concerned parents because of what's going on with school board. And we are recruiting from this group. We also have two young candidates, Derek Rich, District 73, running against Fiona McFarland. He's a young teacher, 29 years old, so excited. He's running in November. And then Daniel Keeter, who is running for County Commission 4, another young guy. So we're really excited. So they are starting, young people are starting to reach out to us because of our outreach with social media and because of the work we're doing with the Young Dem Caucus.
Full disclosure, I think you know that I'm a registered Democrat. Second, I grew up in the Vietnam era, civil rights and all that. And, it seems like they're maybe worse today. So I ask you, the MAGA, the Grutter, Ziegler, Proud Boy crowd, they're sucking up all the air in the room. Why aren't we in the streets? In the days of it, we were in the streets more, obviously. Why can't we, people talk about where's the face? Okay, the face of the Democratic Party. Why aren't we in the streets? What's your take on that?
Well, that's a really good question because people will often say to me, why isn't the Democratic Party out there sponsoring a rally? I look to the outside groups to do that. My job is to get out the Democratic vote.
Right.
Honestly, that's what I do 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, work on how to get that Democratic vote out. I love rallies. I think they have their place. But I personally, the party, that's not their job.
Interesting point of distinction there from Joanne. Organizing and leading rallies, not part of the Democratic Party's job? Apparently, that's not what Republicans like Joe Grutters were thinking when they invited people to board buses to go to the Trump rally on January 6th. Now we turn our focus to demographics and opportunities, specifically the rapidly growing Hispanic community. One might assume that Democrats have an advantage there, but that is not the case. Let's start with an overview of the Hispanic community in Sarasota. Talk about why they are here, what are the demographics, and what makes them unique compared to Hispanics perhaps in other parts of the country.
I think we are here for a number of reasons, and it can range from socioeconomic problems in our own countries, but can range to other things too. Areas of interest that people came to study in the United States and stayed here. I, for example, came here for my husband, who is a U.S.-born person. So, I think we are here for a number of reasons. In Sarasota, there are a lot of Puerto Ricans, and there are a lot of Mexicans too. There are a lot of Cubans. There are a lot of Brazilians. There are Colombians, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans. There are a lot of populations here that would fall into this category of Hispanics. I think it's important to know that when you talk about the census and you have a percentage of, say, for example, a little less than 10% in Sarasota County, but when you look at school district data, that'll double, more than double. So you'll find 21% of the population is Hispanic or Latino. And, we know that a lot of people who come from Latin America or other immigrants are not very comfortable answering the door to a census person or someone, a lot of times with fear of immigration officers and other fears like that from repressive governments that they might have had in their countries. And so I think it's important to know that the census data is probably not as accurate. I think the school district data is more accurate, and it actually doubles, both for Sarasota and for Manatee counties.
Sure. Let's talk politics. What are the issues that would motivate more Sarasota Hispanics to vote for Democrats?
I think that Democrats are really trying to work together. I think one thing is that's happening with the Republican Party became the party of no. So anything that is proposed by a Democratic administration will be voted down. So, and whereas Democrats are trying to work together, and this is something we need to bring back to politics. Politics needs to stop being like the ugly thing that is actually alienating a lot of people from politics because it's so ugly that people don't even want to look at it. So if you look at the Democratic Party, it has many trends. But for example, in terms of new leadership, I think we have very interesting new leaders that have vision and that have empathy, respect, and kindness. And if we don't work in the basis of these basic human values, we're not going to have a country.
But what would Latinos, Hispanics say that their needs are being met by the Republican Party? They're not the wedge issues like perhaps CRT or Roe v. Wade, but that how do I get a better job? How can I afford gas, groceries, more the bread and butter issues?
I particularly find that there is a group of inside the Democratic Party that is younger and a lot of leaders of color that are pointing to better vision in terms of offering universal health care. This is what our population needs. And our planet, if we don't have clean air, clean water, if we don't have a chance of planting, if we have just fires all over and storms all over, we won't be able, there's no sustainability. So we need to be looking into these things that the Republicans not only are not delivering, but they are attacking.
It's interesting you say that because it does seem counterintuitive that immigrant first-generation persons would be more aligned with pro-business, wealthy Republicans than working class.
So what does the Democratic Party do? The Democratic Party has to do a better job in communication. That's one thing that the party really needs to get better at. For example, now the Sarasota Democratic Hispanic Caucus, of which I belong, we are having a show on the Hispanic radio in Spanish. There's also a part of the story that is a lot of people are, for example, construction workers, right? And so with the boom, for example, now talking about Sarasota, all the developing that is going on here in terms of new construction, it's super harmful to the environment. It's super harmful to the town we have. It's super harmful because it's not being done in terms of infrastructure, but it's giving immediate job, no? So that is something that, you know, the person may think. So people need to make a difference between a long-term goal and, you know, your short-term. The fact that you have a job that right now pays your bill doesn't mean that necessarily that's the best politics for you.
In light of all this, what are your goals in Sarasota County?
I think we need to elect more people of color. We need more representation, both the Latinos and the Black population and the indigenous population. You know, we in general have to elect more people of color. The Sarasota Democratic Hispanic Caucus is a political organization. We are in the umbrella of the Democratic Party, and we do try to bring more awareness about the issues and how the issues, the bread and butter issues, for example, that you were talking about, how they relate, for example, with local government. Right. So how do we tie in, for example, the housing crisis that we have right now with the city commissioners, with the county commissioners, that we will have elections right now in August? How do we tie in and understand the dual language program with the school board election? So we're trying to bring this kind of information for the people, for them to understand that things tie in. And wages, for example, you're talking about bread and butter issues again. You know, Florida is terrible in terms of wages. We have very low wages here. And at the same time, we have very expensive housing right now. So this is creating a terrible situation that a lot of people are leaving Florida. And that's why a lot of people times you see, oh, they're looking for workers. People don't want to work. People are lazy. No, people are not lazy. People are not finding a place to live.
She makes a strong point about Sarasota housing costs for working class families. Whether the party can convert that issue into registered Hispanic Democrats will impact the future of our county. Finally, we turn to a local political activist radio talk show host, and published author, Kathy Antunes. Let's start with party affiliation. Where would you place yourself on the political spectrum?
Well, I would place myself as a moderate. I think a lot of people consider themselves fiscal conservatives and socially moderate or liberal. I'd say that's me. But I was, more than 30 years, I was an NPA, no party affiliation, independent. Then I registered Republican because I wanted to be able to vote for a local candidate in the primary. And then in 2016, I'm from New York. I'm very familiar with Mr. Trump from being a New Yorker. That family had personal dealings with him. Anyway, I became a Democrat because I was really alarmed at what I saw in the Republican Party.
Sarasota County obviously is a service-driven economy, but as we know, the service community can't afford to live here. This seems to be a political opportunity for Democrats. Are they meeting that need?
We don't have affordable housing. It's not really been a priority. I mean, there's been a lot of lip service paid to it, but affordable housing is often dangled in front of the community as a reason to give density bonuses, basically give more dwelling units or commercial units to a developer. And then that happened at University Town Center. There was going to be affordable housing. It was going to be walkable. We got a standard mall. We got the last standard mall that was built in the United States. So our Democrats have to up their game.
Naturalization rates for Hispanics are climbing off the roof.
Okay.
So what's the most compelling reason that you could think of that would have a Hispanic citizen register to vote in the Democratic Party?
Well, just generally speaking, I think the Democratic Party they're starting to do better, but they have been AWOL in local politics for a very long time. With the exception of the city commissions, the Democratic Party hasn't even run candidates. If you look historically, you have to be at the table having the conversation. And the Republican Party is, they have the conversation. They get out there and they put a message together. The Democratic Party, in my experience, they don't do that. They're not effectively doing that. One of my beefs with the Democratic Party locally is they love to have fundraisers for national or state candidates, but mainly national candidates. And they're completely absent on the ground. A friend of mine introduced me to a couple who had just moved here and they were Democrats. And they said, we called the local party to see, what we could do. And they asked us to phone bank. And they were like, but, we don't really want to do that. And what I told them was, that's the work that has to be done. And Republicans, if you want to think of it as grunt work, but the Democratic Party hasn't given a family values message, and that's important to Latin families,
Absolutely.
And they have a message to share, but it seems to me they would rather talk and argue about it than execute a plan.
Talk about succession planning. What about young voters? We have a lot of senior Republicans. What are the Democrats doing to bolster confidence?
You have to if you're going to have somebody get out there in a contentious political environment and put their name on the ballot, you better have their back. And the Democratic Party has to do a better job of mentoring young people, developing a message, and then having the back of people who run. You can't be passive. So where I see the Republican Party being very active, the problem, the counterbalance to what we've created collectively in this country together and locally is that passivity of the Democratic Party that has to change.
I grew up during the, a little bit ahead of you, during the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, all the social disobedience.
Right.
Are Democrats missing that moment? Too many cocktail parties on Longboat Key, and why aren't we on the streets?
It seems like this sort of la-la land, like things aren't really gonna go bad. And it's like, you better get your game face on and understand democracy's at risk here. So I agree with that characterization. Too many cocktail parties, not
And
wanting to
luncheons.
rock the boat. Yeah,
Mhm.
luncheons. And we have a lovely philanthropy community, and people like to focus on that. And I understand why, but we can lose our country if we're not driving the bus. And there needs to be a counterbalance to this extremism. You can't just lay back and
Exactly.
think it's going to go away.
Okay, finally, your recently published Insurrection Scrapbook, Dangers to Democracy. You expose Republicans in Sarasota County supporting the big lie. Let's turn the table. What are the local Democrats doing or not doing?
No one's running against Joe Gruters. I mean, this guy was Trump's campaign manager. He was tweeting "Stop the Steal" stuff. He met with Sidney Powell, you know, in Thanksgiving of 2021. He is heading the RNC Election Integrity Committee, which, you know, most people recognize the voter suppression legislation that's happened around the country. Why isn't the Democratic Party fielding a candidate to challenge Joe Gruters? So, you know, there's a way that this kind of, we have to stand with the truth. The truth is the Republican Party over time has relied on wedge issues like abortion, like, you know, the Second Amendment, as if everybody, and they create these false boogeymen, like someone's going to take all your guns away, you know, or that babies are being killed in the 9th month. I mean, this is nonsense. But I think the Democratic Party, rather than get in, and you have to engage, you have to take this stuff on. They have not. And it's beyond time, because the danger is we really can. Look at what happened on January 6th. If those folks aren't held accountable, why wouldn't they try again?
A powerful observation, Kathy. No question, Democrats need to step up. The January 6th Commission is doing a masterful job, but what about grassroots efforts here at home? I'm a moderate Democrat, and honestly, I fear we are underreacting, too complacent. Dr. King, like Gandhi, taught that social change does not happen without civil disobedience and peaceful resistance. Here in our little corner of paradise, we have a lot to be grateful for. And I believe we are generally a caring and generous community. But you know what, friends? It's easy to write a check. This is one mess, and I mean Sarasota Democrats can't buy our way out of. If you would like more information about voter registration, volunteering, and political parties in Florida, go to these links. And you can always see this show and all our previous shows on my website and YouTube channel. That wraps up another one. Hope you learned something and enjoyed the show. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, I'll see you around town.
Atwell Media is a registered, not-for-profit 501c3. If you would like to support local public service programming like this, please visit our website, SuzanneAtwell.org, to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for watching.